Good afternoon to everyone that is joining us today. We would firstly like to apologize for starting our webinar late. We have been experiencing some technical difficulties, but we are here and we are continuing on with all the webinars that we had planned. So this is the first of a series of webinars that we're having to commemorate Women's Month. So to end of Women's Month, we're having a series of webinars that are dedicated to women. So for example, today we'll be focusing on women in entrepreneurship. Tomorrow we'll be focusing on women in leadership. And on Saturday, as our final day, we'll be focusing on a little bit of girl talk. Unfortunately, we had 3 speakers that we had planned for today, but due to technical difficulties and other unplanned factors, they could not be with us. But we do still have Dr Muthumuni Managa joining us today. Welcome to our webinars. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for inviting me.
So my name is Beverly Chanaiwa. I will be your facilitator for this session. We will be mostly speaking about what it means to be a woman in entrepreneurship in this day and age in today's society. Right? So with Dr. Muthumuni Managa joining us today, I'm just going to give you a brief introduction of who she is and why we chose her as our speaker today. So Dr. Muthumuni Managa was born in a dusty village of Harabali in the north of Magado in Venda. She obtained her PhD from Rhodes University, and she is the owner of the famous Mutu's Kitchen here in Grahamstown, a Kasi-style restaurant. It was a nostalgia for affordable township cuisine in Makhanda's exotic restaurants. She identified an entrepreneurship opportunity, which did not only nourish the appetite of the students of Grahamstown, but also provide an opportunity for some of them to have part-time jobs. This was one of her greatest investments. Mutu's Kitchen opened its doors on the 30th of September in 2017. And besides being a woman in entrepreneurship, she is also a mother and a researcher. As a young researcher, she has produced a number of high-quality publications, 32 to be exact, in highly respected journals. And she has an H index of 9 on Google Scholar. That is very high if you don't know. And this demonstrates the excellent quality of work and research potential. The quality of her work is very praiseworthy, and the work is well disseminated. Dr. Managa was a recipient of the Mail and Guardian 200 Youngs of Africans of 2018. So Dr. Managa, thank you for being with us once again. We'd just like to know, where did this all start? How did you begin your journey?
I would say the journey of entrepreneurship began when I was a young child. My mom was a farmer, so we had a small, I would say a small orchard in Venda where she planted vegetables. So we would go house to house selling things like tomatoes, spinach, and that's how the interest of entrepreneurship started for me. And also having a father who was a bricklayer and became one of the most successful businessmen in Venda, that also enticed my interest in business.
Okay, that's very interesting. So based on how you started and based on your experiences or the experience that you've had so far since you started your journey, what would you say it means for you to be a woman in entrepreneurship in South Africa at the moment?
It means that you must put in times 2 of everything that you do. So in terms of time, in terms of commitment, the motivation, you have to do it times 2. Because as women in South Africa who are into entrepreneurship, we tend to be looked down upon. That just because you're a woman, you cannot be a successful businesswoman. So it's a continuous fight to stand firm and say, you know what, this is my dream and this is what I want to do, and I'm gonna give it all that I have.
As a woman, you have to do twice the work for half the praise.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely.
So what would you say are some of the hurdles and challenges that you faced since you began this journey?
I'll definitely say gender inequality. And I'll definitely say that unfavorable business environment. For me, as I started this business in Makhanda, we know that Grahamstown is a very small town, and most of the businesses it's very monopolized. So to penetrate through, for me, it was very honestly, it was very hard. And as a black young woman wanting to open a business in the CBD of Makhanda, that seemed very far fetched. And when you go knocking on doors, hardly people want to listen to you. But because I had a vision and I was determined to make it work, I had to keep knocking until doors were opened.
Okay. Okay. So we know that money is always talking.
Yes.
You know, when you're starting a business,
Yeah,
you always need to have money.
You
right?
definitely have to have some form of capital.
Yeah. So for like the young women out there right now that are trying to start their businesses and they're struggling with financing or funding opportunities, what are their options?
You know, there are a lot of options. I would say for me, I was very fortunate because I had a bit of savings and I approached my siblings to help me. So they gave me loans that were interest free, and I know many are not that fortunate. So there are quite a lot of organizations that are willing to fund business ideas, that they're also willing to fund business that are already starting. Some of these I would say is like the NYDA grant program, the Toloana Enterprise Fund, the Technology Innovation Agency, that is an initiative by the Department of Science and Technology, and also the Youth Entrepreneurship Fund. So these are just a few. There are so many, to be honest with you, that if you have a business plan and they see that there's a potential, I don't see why they should not fund you. Or if you have a business that you see you need more funding to grow it, these are some of the programs that you can approach with what you have, and I'm sure they'll definitely be willing to help you.
So from your biography and everything, we've seen that not only are you an entrepreneur, but you're also a mother.
Yes.
And you're also a full-time researcher.
Yes.
So between trying to balance all three, how have you managed to do that without compromising the other?
Well, to be honest with you, it's not easy. And there are a lot of compromises that one has to make. There will be a time where I'll just only have 3 hours of sleep in a day. And those are the kind of sacrifices that one needs to make. And, you know, another thing was, it was difficult for me to also keep nurturing friendships, because also a nurturing friendship needs time. Being a mother needs time. Being a researcher needs time. And being a businesswoman also needs time. So you tend to maybe neglect the other and focuses on the other. So to prioritize what at that point is important, you know, and I'm a very family-oriented person. So one of the things that I realized that I sacrificed a lot was family time. You know, since our grandson is so far, so I would mostly go home whenever that I could. But I find myself now only go home once a year, like in December. So those are the kind of things that I had to sacrifice, but my family understood why I was making those sacrifices. Yeah.
Okay, so my next question would have been what sacrifices you've had to make, but I think you've already touched on that. So just to close this off, as we've seen, just in Grahamstown alone, we have a lot of women that are trying to start up their own businesses and they're struggling. So what advice would you give to the young people that are trying to start their businesses or trying to find their footing in the entrepreneurship world but don't know how to?
You know, one thing that I always say is that keep knocking those doors until someone opens. And don't be afraid of failure. And that's one thing that I realized that holds a lot of young people back, because we're so afraid of failing and neglect to remember that by failing, there's so many lessons you can learn from it. And you know, another thing is that in business, you have to listen to your customers. You know, customers that have a best interest in your business, they'll always give you suggestions, and they'll always give you criticism that is beneficial for your business. So I would say it's very wise to listen and take up the suggestions, because as a person, you learn every day and you grow every day. And that's one thing that I always say is that customers and listening to them, that's what keeps business going. And also another thing is that you have to put in time. There is nothing that can be successful if you don't give in time. And another thing is that you have to be patient. When you're growing a business, patience is it's one of the things that you have to keep, because there will be days where you might not even have reached what you wanted to reach for that day in terms of sales, and other days it might be worse. So you have to be very patient. Business is gradual. It's not like just something that just goes overnight. And also another thing is that you have to budget like a pro. That's a saying that I learned from my parents. Because in business, without budgeting, it honestly you won't know where it's going. And if you want to keep it growing, budget is the most important thing. And also listen to yourself. And I would say, yes, there would be negative criticism, but only take those that can build you, not that can break you. That's one thing that I keep saying all the time, that also self-care is very important. Mental, it can be mental, emotional. It is also important when you want to be successful in business. It's okay sometimes to take time off and say, you know what, I think today I just want to concentrate on how is Muthumuni feeling, how is she doing today, besides everything else that is surrounding her. Then you know that you are destined to succeed in whatever that you want to do.
Okay. Thank you so much for that enriching advice that you've given us. We're going to take a very quick break, and then we're going to come back to answer all your questions that you've been posing. If you do still want to ask Dr. Muthumuni Managa a question, you can still put a comment in our comment section, and we'll get your question as soon as we come back. Please stay tuned. Okay, welcome back. We are back answering the questions that have been posed on the comment section. And so far, the first question that I have is, how did you manage to successfully switch from chemistry to business, seeing that you've been studying chemistry and your research is in chemistry?
I always view chemistry as like cooking in the kitchen. So for me, it was not
chemicals.
Yes. So for me, it was not that hard to open a restaurant, a food restaurant, because when you cook, you are mixing things, you are mixing ingredients, and that's how I view chemistry. You are mixing solvents, you are mixing certain reagents in order to make a product. That's like if you want to cook tribe, you have the tribe, you have to add the salt, you have to add a certain heat. So it's definitely the same thing. So it wasn't a very difficult transition, Yes.
Okay, as a researcher, I can understand what you mean.
Yes.
And I think that's all the questions we have. I think, okay, there are some more questions coming in that I've just been told about. Let me just see. Okay. One question that I have, do you think, now that you're both in business and in chemistry, do you think you're going to continue working on both? Or are you going to branch out to go full on into business, or just go back to science?
For short-term goal, I see both. I've got passion for both, but one in a long term has to give. To be honest with you, at this point, I am not sure. But honestly, for short term, definitely both. But for long term, it's something that I am still working towards to see. Now, as you grow, also your interests change a bit. So in the long term, I will see where is my interest and my job. Because as you grow, also more responsibilities are coming along. So I will definitely see which one allows me to be fully there. Yeah.
Definitely, I understand that.
Yes.
Our next question, COVID-19 has affected so many businesses and a lot of them had to close. How did you manage to sustain your business during this period?
You know, COVID-19 affected everyone, and that's the sad part about it. Um, for my business, it was so sad because I had two ladies that worked for me, but unfortunately, I could not afford to keep both of them. I had to let go of one and keep one in order to sustain the business, you know. And throughout the lockdown, I was a bit fortunate also because I had a bit of savings from the business. So I kept paying the ladies, but it's very sad that now there's a family that probably doesn't have an income because I cannot sustain paying both workers and also sustaining the business. And it's better than when we had totally closed. So it's slowly getting there, even though we are not there, but at least the business is keeping afloat.
Um, so from what inspired you to start your business, right? The next question is touching on that.
Yes.
And it is asking, why was it so important for you to focus on Kasi food for your restaurant?
Because I realized there wasn't really any that was easily accessible to students. So the main market for me when I opened it was for students, because the whole conversation of how this honestly started was it was on the recruit page that one student was like, I honestly miss home. I wish I could have a quarter, you know. And it just happened that I was having a conversation with a friend of mine, and then she tagged me in that status. She was like, don't you think it's about time that now you open this business? Because there's definitely a need. So with the amount of comments that I saw on that status, I realized, you know what, this is now about time. Because we've seen also how Rhodes has been transforming. So I was like, maybe this is one of the things that is honestly needed for students, that they shouldn't only eat a quarter or eat ulusu when they're at home. Even when they're here at Rhodes, they can just easily walk less than 2 minutes to go and buy it. Yeah.
Finally found that niche
Yes.
in the market that was missing.
Definitely.
All right. So the next question, does your business help the community where it is located?
Yes, it definitely does. So we've been running Muthu's Kitchen Soup, where we cook the soup. So I usually, where I stock my vegetables, I collaborated with the guy there where he gives me vegetables sometimes where I can be able to cook for the cargans that are around there. So they just come. It's really like, it's been cold and stuff like that, or some don't have food. So I usually do that. Then they can just come and get for free.
And then how would you say the communities is involved in this?
I would honestly say in terms of the growth, because now it's not just only the students who are the markets. We've seen the people also who are in the high courts, the people who are working in the offices around town, the people who are in the military base, they come and they buy. So you can see in terms of the growth, how it has, and also how the community is honestly supporting Mojo's Kitchen. Yeah.
And I think also, as in Grahamstown, it's a very small community.
Yes.
So we do need to constantly support each other and support all the small businesses in Grahamstown so that we can all keep afloat, especially in these times.
Definitely.
Yes. Okay, I'm getting more questions. Right. What advice would you give to studentpreneurs?
Okay. I would say don't be afraid to start. And I started my business while I was a student. So it's honestly doable. And I say ideas honestly come when you are still a student. Even after, yes, they do come. But don't say just because I'm a student, I cannot start this business. There's no such thing. If you have an idea, follow it, and that's what it takes. It just takes that initiative for you to say, yes, I'm a student, but I think I can manage both. How come other people are doing it? And this is the kind of questions you should ask yourself.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I do think as students, that's when you have your most enriching ideas.
Definitely.
But it's just the implementation is always what's difficult from a student point of view.
Yes.
Do you have any closing remarks for us before we close off our webinar?
I would definitely say one thing is that never let go of your plans and your dreams, especially now as a woman. There are so many opportunities now. You just have to search and find them, and don't stop searching until you find what can help you. That's just one thing. It's one thing to have an idea, but another to implement it and keep on standing firm to accomplish to where you want to be in terms of your business. Yeah.
Yes. Thank you so much for joining us, Dr. Muthumuni. It has been so wonderful having you here today. And as you guys have seen, this has been a very enriching webinar that we've had today. And like I said, this is only the beginning of many. You can expect to have our very own SRC President, Ms. Mphahlele, joining us for the remaining of the webinars, or for one of them. You have to tune in to find out which. And with that, I would like to say thank you so much for joining us. Brought to you by the Rhodes SRC. Tune in again tomorrow and on Saturday for the rest of our Women's Month webinars. Goodbye.